Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to another Elestral's Divine Champion Sunstrike reveal update. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the reveals from this past Monday, as well as one creator reveal, not a creator card, but revealed by a member of the community. That was posted yesterday. So we'll be taking a look at these cards and going over them. And then at the end, we'll kind of recap what's still to come, some thoughts on what could be there. Um, so let's get started here. So our first card, we're going to start out here kind of in order of element. We have the last reveal from the presentation on Monday, which was kind of the tease for next week in Bellaby, Champion of Hephaestus. So Bellaby, Champion of Hephaestus is a 3/4 fire Elestral that reads, when you cast this Bellaby, you can search your deck for a Reforge and add it to your hand. So very, very simple effect. So the reveal of this does tease the Infornax Champion of Hephaestus, which should be revealed next week, given that we've got the Bellaby and we always get the full Ascension line in the Champion versions. So we'll have to see what Infornax Champion of Hephaestus does, and see how that plays with this Bellaby potentially. Not too sure if it will. We've seen some effects, they don't really mash up fully in the line, but I could see this Bellaby getting your Reforge, and then there be some payoff to using a Reforge or returning an artifact from your underworld with the Infornax. And just as a reminder of what Reforge does, because you don't see the card played often to ever, it is a 1-cost fire invoke rune. So this can be searched off Hephaestus if you're using Champion of Hephaestus Small Tuga to search those fire invoke runes. So you can return an artifact rune from your underworld to your hand, and then return spirits equal to that artifact rune's enchantment cost from your underworld to your spirit deck. So this card is nice, though, that it works for all artifacts. You can use it for fire artifacts, you can use it for any elemental artifacts, and you're getting any number of spirits back. You don't have to return the specific spirits either. You could have a Hammer of Hephaestus which costs 2 fire, and you could return 2 water, because there is not a specification that it has to be that exact spirit type. It just says spirits equal to the enchantment cost. So that would be 1 spirit for a 1 spirit, 2 spirits for a 2, and so on. I think this card doesn't necessarily read as well, but that's just because we don't really have a great way to play Reforge currently. Now that we have a way to search it, maybe it might be a little bit more playable in an artifact strategy. We'll have to see what the Infornax does, though. Moving on, we have some Hestia champions joining the fray. We have Ursmog, Champion of Hestia. So this Ursmog is just a little guy at 1/2, but this effect is going to bring the bear strategy to life for Hestia. So this Ursmog's effect is when you cast this Ursmog from your hand, you can Nexus 1 fire. When you do, you can special cast a 1 spirit champion that is a Champion of Hestia or an Ursa from your deck. So this does read it has to be an Celestial from deck, so if you have the card you want in hand, you need to have another copy of it in your deck, or you have to be able to cast something else from your deck. But if you're playing in this in more of a bears dedicated strategy, you're probably going to have enough copies of those bears to cast one from your deck either way. This card, in combination with Hestia and kind of in the bear bomb package, is going to be extremely strong. So if you cast this Ursmog off Hestia's effect, whether going first or second, you probably want to do the second because the Bear Bomb is meant to kind of destroy your opponent's field, so you want them to play a little bit into the game before doing this. But if you have Hestia, you have this Ursmog in your hand, And then you've got that equal or less number of Elestrals on your field compared to your opponent. You special out this Ursmog. Um, you special out this Ursmog. It'd also be good if you have an Ursa Den that you can set up at this time. So set up an Ursa Den, cast this Ursmog, enchant one to the Ursa Den. Then you will Nexus one fire from Hestia over to the Ursa Den. Your Ursa Den is then set up to be able to play out a the Majursa champion. And then you're special casting a one Spirit Celestial that's a champion of Hestia or an Ursa. Well, what are some good cards for that? We'll scroll back up here. A really nice target that hasn't seen much play is an Scout champion of Hestia. So Scout champion of Hestia has to be special cast. This is both a champion of Hestia and an Ursa Celestial. And so you can cast this out as a one Spirit champion of Hestia or Ursa, and you get to search your deck for a champion of Hestia and add it to your hand. Well, now we've got quite a few champions of Hestia, so you could search out a lot of things. So let's take a look right here. You've got Torchin, you're probably not searching that out. Ampherix, probably not. Fluoracne, not really in this strategy, though you could consider it as a good defensive wall, but it's not really going to work in this strategy. Warmite is a good card. This probably would be included potentially in some Hestia dedicated list. Warmite's always a good search. Also is a good target for that initial Ursmog Nexus as well, to help try to bring your opponent's attack down. But you can search a Majursa champion of Hestia. And I know most Bear Bomb decks to now have only played one, but I think you've got a really good reason to play two Majursa champions of Hestia here. So you grab a Majursa champion of Hestia, and you've got one in hand and presumably one still in deck. And so then this also would trigger, if you're using the Scout, then you're triggering another spirit to get put onto your Ursa Den. If you're playing Hibernation and you've already got some spirits put in your Underworld, you could then heal some more to your Ursa Den, so you're keeping your Ursa Den online as long as you keep two spirits on it, presumably fire and one frost. And then you can use your Ursa Den to disenchant 4 from it. We'll scroll down to Ursa Den. So you're going to disenchant 4 from it. So if you can get 6 spirits on here, you can disenchant 4 of them, hopefully keep 1 fire and 1 frost onto it, and then you're going to special cast an Ursa Celestial. So your other champion, Majursa, you're going to special that out. You're going to try to blow up your opponent's board. And then if they stop that Majursa, guess what? You have a second Majursa in hand. You still have not normal cast this turn. Go ahead and cast it over your Ursmog and your Scout, siphoning from one or the other, depending on which one you go over, and then you just doubled the Majursas. You're definitely blowing up your opponent's board, and you're swinging in for at least 3, probably 6, depending on what their board is and how early you're doing this. This looks to be potentially dangerous come Sunstrike, but it looks like it's going to be really fun. Does require you to have the pieces, so it's a good thing Nog is out of here, but Bear Bomb might be back and look really scary come Sunstrike. Moving on to our next card, we've got Ash Rabbit, Champion of Hestia. So this Ash Rabbit is a 2/4, 1 fire, and your fire Elestrals get +2 attack. So he's really a 4/4, properly enchanted. When you cast a fire Elestral, you can enchant fire from your Underworld to your field. So if you're just playing this Ash Rabbit, he becomes a 4/4, as well as then getting 2 spirits on him. This is a really nice card to set up Ascension plays. So you can, into, say, a 3-drop Alestral, you can special out the Ash Rabbit with Hestia, immediately enchant another fire to it, and then normal ascend over it into a 3-drop. Could be really, really strong. You can also use this card to start triggering other effects. So special out a Mormite Champion of Hestia, get a drop, normal cast out your Ash Rabbit, buff both of those Elestrals. So Mormite is then natively a 5, so effectively an 8. Enchant another fire to it, make it an 11, and then you've got Hestia's Hearth. If you have that set, that's another 6. You're getting over anything in the game, attack wise or defense wise, at that point. So it's really, really fun. This is going to be a nice little tech piece for Hestia. I don't know how good it is. It's going to be a little bit niche in its applications just because it does really work well with being able to use Hestia's effect for the special casting, but recurring some of the cost from the Hestia having to disenchant 2 is really nice, and you can keep your Hestia around longer and potentially trigger it more if you're just always healing that one spirit to your Hestia. So if you're using Hestia for 4, disenchant the 2, heal 1 back to it, you're at 3, use it 3 to 2, and then your Hestia would be gone on the third use. So you're getting 1 extra use out of it turn over turn if you keep it around. So this looks to be fun. We'll see how it really plays out, but I think it'll be a nice little tech slot into some Hestia decks. This also would work nice with a Lutrax as well, because you're trying to get 1 extra spirit onto your Lutrax for the stat dropping effect to your opponent's non-fire enchanted Elestrals. So this, will work out with some stuff. Moving on, the main bulk of our reveals here this week was Hera and her family. Hera's full set of Elestrals, at least that are Thunder, because we'll talk about this later, that are primarily Thunder cards, have been revealed. So we've already had Imperial revealed to us, the Jolton revealed to us, and Platypulse revealed to us. We had Riceros as kind of our teaser card last week, and so now we have the rest of her Elestrals revealed here. So we'll start off with the 1-drop of Quackle, Champion of Hera. So when you cast this Quackle, you can search your deck for a card with a name that includes Hera and add it to your hand. You can return 1 Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck in order to target an Celestial and give it -2 attack until the next turn. So this Quackle is really easy. You get a nice effect that lets you search a card with a name that includes Hera. So looking at Quackle here, just to go over what this actually can search, Hera has to be listed in this gray area, which is the name of the card. Below here, the Champion of Hera, which is the title, that does not count for this effect. The name does not equal a title. You have to refer to other cards like, I believe, Champion of Poseidon Ivory, or like a Sprouter, Champion of Dionysus. Other cards that specifically say search for a champion of a divine would have to be the wording. But since this specifies a name, that has to be here in the actual name of the card. Name does not equal title for these cards. So what can it search? We will talk about these cards more in depth later, but at this moment, what it can search is Hera herself. So look, Divine Searcher in your main signature Celestial line. So it can search Hera, bring your Divine out. It can search the Divine Rune, Scepter of Hera. Not an actual Divine Rune, sorry, the Divine's Artifact in the Scepter of Hera, which I think is a pretty good card. Or it can search the Invoke Rune, Family of Hera. Also probably going to be a really good card. So we will get into these more, but your Quackle does let you search out Hera's rune kit currently. Likely in the future there will be more Hera's cards, but right now that's what we can search out, which I do think is enough for this card right now. And then this also does give you a little bit of that Hera flavor of returning Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck, and then giving you the added effect to target an Celestial and give it -2 attack until the next turn. This isn't really the best effect for returning one, because you're going to most likely do it from Hera. Quackle's only a 2 attacker, so this makes it a 4. I don't really know what Quackle's getting over. So in combination with the Platypulse giving the buff, it's still only a 5. 5s are good, but I do think in this coming set, like, having a 5 and needing it in combat is probably not going to matter as much. So I think this is going to be used as mainly a searcher for Hera, for those other Hera runes, predominantly. Probably going to be cast in defense. So if you can stick it around, then this secondary effect becomes good as more setting up Imperial, but on its own, not that great. Now, a really cool card, the middle stage, that I think can really stand alone and be a little bit more of what you're trying to do with a Hera deck, Signetric Champion of Hera. So at a 5/7 to Thunder, when an opponent casts an Celestial, you can disenchant 1 Thunder from your field in order to target that Celestial and daze it until your next turn. So this is a really nice defensive control option. Your opponent is casting out your Celestial. If your opponent's a little bit more battle oriented in their deck, you are immediately saying, nope, you're dazed, sorry. As long as you're disenchanting from your field, you're probably going to have Hera built up on your board by the time this is out, so likely that you're going to be able to disenchant 1 from it, daze them, keep them from attacking into your board, and try to protect your board. And then when you return 1 or more Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck, you can target and destroy a face down rune. So this is where I think Signetric really shines, and especially in a control style. Hera wants to be doing this. Hera's deck wants to be returning Thunder from the field to the Spirit deck in order to set up an Imperial, but just in general, it wants to be doing this. So you're going to be able to do this with Hera's effect. You're going to be able to do this with other, with the other champions of Hera that are specifically doing it for some other effect. So if you get this Signetric out and just sit on it, you're going to be targeting and destroying your opponent's face down runes the entire game. This is, really going to help for once you want to attack in, getting rid of shields, getting rid of Dionysus Madness. They may be able to chain some of these to use them, but I think you're going to really sit defensively with the Signetric a lot more in the early to mid game. Get your opponent to waste those cards, keep your opponent off of stuff, and really set up your board to be able to then kind of hit that big bomb of Imperial Champion of Hera once you have the ability to return those 3 Thunder Spirits from your field to your Spirit deck in 1 turn. So since we got Race Heras at the end of the last one, we'll go over again just real quick. A 2/5 can return a Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck in order to special send this Race Heras to Rice Ridge from your hand or deck. Rice Ridge, Champion of Hera. So it is a 5/7, so we've got 2 5/7s, but this is a Thunder Frost. You can return Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck in order to foretell 4 and choose up to 2 Thunder or Frost cards foretold this way. Add 1 to your hand and send the other to the underworld. So this is really interesting because it is an up to effect. So cards are going to resolve as much as possible in this case. So if you only want to choose 1 card, when you go to doing the add to hand and send to underworld, the add to hand is the first effect. So you're going to add that first card to your hand, and then you're just not going to send anything to your underworld because there's nothing to send to your underworld. So this is really interesting. I don't know right now for sure what Frost cards you're going to be playing in this kind of strategy. I think that will come when we talk about what other champions of Hera could still be lurking for us. But I think this is really interesting. We'll see what kind of underworld strategy there is with Hera, since we can send some stuff. None of this thunder stuff really seems like you want it in your underworld right away. So we'll see if there's some frost cards that do want to be sent to the underworld in Hera to trigger some effects. But I think this is so much better than original Rice Ridge. This might be a good card. Still kind of a little bit on the control-y side. I think we haven't seen all the cards that tells us which way we want to go with playing this card just yet, though. The next champion of Hera we have is Magneros, champion of Hera. So another Magneros, just another Magneros. You think we're going to have enough of these by the time all Divine Champions is done, but sure enough, I'm sure there's another title lurking out there come set 9 for a Magneros. So this Magneros is a 4/4, so pretty good stat line for a Magneros. This one does not count as Aepharos, so that is very nice. And then, so this Magneros can be special cast from your hand with 1 Thunder if you also return a 1 Spirit Champion of Hera that is not Magneros from your field to the hand and all its enchanting Thunder to the Spirit deck. You can Nexus up to 2 Thunder. So, this card is really interesting. This card, I think, is going to be what sets up your Imperial. This card, in combination with the Platypulse, as long as you have Hera on your field, as long as you have Hera as well, this is going to get you into your Imperial. So I think potentially what this looks like in terms of what you want in your hand. You want Imperial in your hand. So whether that is using Jolton to search it out, so having Hera on your field, returning a spirit to your spirit deck from the Hera with Hera's effect, casting out Jolton, grabbing your Imperial Champion of Hera with Jolton's kind of secondary effect on the search since you've returned, and then you set yourself up in future turns. I think the turn you're trying to go for the Imperial normal cast, you need to Platypulse special cast by returning 1 off of the Hera, and then you get your Platypulse out. Then you can use Hera's effect, returning your second spirit to spirit deck. Then you can Magneros you can use Magneros Champion of Hera, and you can return your Platypulse to your hand and its spirit to your spirit deck. Now you've hit 3. You have not normal cast this turn. Now your Imperial is set up. Normal cast your Imperial and use its effect to force your opponent to disenchant from their field. That is just one way that you can do this, but if you're using strictly the Champions of Hera and the Celestial effects, that is one way I see that you can do it. Seems like it could be fairly consistent because you're getting special cast effects, you're returning cards to your hand because of special cast effects. Your opponent's going to need to be able to Gorgons to stop this, but if they don't have Gorgons, this isn't something that they're really P-boxing because you're not searching anything from your deck. You're getting everything into your hand first and then being able to do this from hand. So I think this is going to look really fun. Imperial's definitely going to have a lot of ways, especially if you can use the Signetric as more of the control stall to set up your hand and the rest of your board as well. And then we have good old Astrabbit back in a new form, still a 2/5. And by the way, probably the best Hera Celestial art is this one, in my opinion. This is such a good art. So when this Astrabbit receives 1 or more Thunder, you can enchant 1 Thunder from your Underworld to your Rune Row. So you can heal more spirits back onto your Hera or your Scepter of Hera or some other artifact rune in your rune row. When you return one or more Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck, you can swap each Elestral's attack with its defense until the next turn. So, Galaxy no longer um, can have all the bunny hate. This bunny can potentially sit in attack position and then do its swap and then get a swap from using Hera's effect, because you're returning a Thunder to Hera, and you could then use that Thunder for the Hera cost to activate its effect, and then switch it to an attack rabbit. So this is a fun card. We'll have to see with the stat swapping how much this is really going to play in effect. Definitely can be a tech piece. Stat swapping has typically always been good in some capacity for in this game, so I think there is good chance to have this see play. But it is playing off more of what when you're doing something, rather when you're doing the return from the field to the Spirit deck specifically, so it needs some other card to trigger that other effect. You're just setting up more cards on your fields, or more Thunder Spirits on your field to be able to use for those effects. So it does have to pair with other cards to really be playable. And then we will go down to the rest of Hera just to kind of fully round her out. So we already know about Hera and her effect, but her new runes, so we've got her artifact rune and Scepter of Hera. So there can only be one face-up Scepter of Hera on your field. Your champions of Hera get +2/+2. And then when you activate your Hera's active effect, which is the returning the spirits, not the enchanting spirits, to her from her cast, that is not the active effect. The active effect is that second effect of actually returning the spirits and then enchanting back to her from the underworld. So when you activate the active effect, you can return Thunder from your Hera to your Spirit deck. So this will trigger that second spirit back. So this is going to help facilitate your Imperial. In this case, if you combine this with the Magneros, if you've got a card on field, a different Celestial that has already been able to return one Thunder Spirit to your deck from its effect, and you have Magneros in hand, as long as that's a one spirit champion of Hera, you can play out your Scepter of Hera to that same Celestial. Then you've got stat buff, which you're not really going for, but you can save your Hera effect until after you've already returned one. Then you can use your Hera effect. You've triggered 2, so if it's Platypulse that you've done this with, you can do the Platypulse first, disenchant, get that from the Hera, use your Hera effect for 2, then you don't even need your Magneros at that point. Cast your Imperial and go destroy your opponent's board from the disenchant. This card is definitely, there is a reason that you can only have one of these face up at a time. If you had more than this, your Imperial just becomes way too easy to do, but this is going to be a very strong artifact in this deck. Look out for this card. And then the +2/+2 is nothing to shake a stick at, especially with some of the other stat buffs from Imperial itself, from Platypulse. This looks to be really good. And then lastly, we have we pull it up here, the Family of Hera. So a 1 Thunder Invoke rune that states, enchant up to 2 Thunder from your Underworld to your champions of Hera or your rune row. Then you may return 1 Thunder Spirit from your field to your Spirit deck. So this is recurring your Thunder Spirits very nicely. So you're healing 2 by getting it onto your Celestial, so you can proc receive effects from Thunder Elestrals. You can just load up Scepters, Heras, whatever you really need. load them up with extra spirits, and then one of those spirits is going to go back to your deck. So this is just another way to get another one spirit back from your field to your spirit deck to go into Imperial. So I'm really seeing multiple lines that you can go to Imperial, which is why I think you're going to try to do a lot of control strategy with Signectric at first. Just get something that they have to really deal with and worry about destroying their runes and not being able to get over it. And then you're just trying to gain card advantage over over the middle of the game to then go into Imperial at the right time, have multiple lines to be able to set up that Imperial, and then ultimately win the game. Because once the Imperial comes out in the mid to late game, if your opponent doesn't have a way to stop it and then immediately out it, I think you've already won the game. So really good Hera cards. I think they did a really good job in designing Hera, and what the deck will look like. We don't know what the structure deck will look like, but I think it's going to be really good. It's going to be a really fun strategy, and really fun to learn how to play this style of deck. All right, and then we talked a little bit last week from Kay's reveal of the Zipossum, but we now have the Ascension into Electropossum. So it's a 6/2, 2 thunder cost. When this Electropossum receives one or more thunder, you can send a face up or face down thunder rune on your field to the underworld in order to target and destroy a card. So this is really nice in the fact that you can use it to destroy a card. So stadiums, artifacts, divines, face down runes, Alestrals, face up runes. This is really nice to be able to do that. It does have the limitation of being a receive effect, but so you're getting this on cast already. So when he comes out, you're targeting to destroy something. But what's really nice here, and where it's really playing off of other cards, is the fact that you can send a face down thunder rune. So you are limited to send a thunder rune, but if you're playing this with Hera or Zeus, there's quite a few thunder runes you can use for this. You got Thunderbolts of Zeus, probably not playing that as much, but your scepters or your Heras, you've got those. And then you also have what is probably the best combo card with it, and design-wise what it's meant to be played with, is the new counter rune High Voltage. So this is a 1-cost thunder counter rune that reads, target an Alestral that is not thunder enchanted and daze it until your next turn. So this is going to be its actual activated effect, which you're flipping it over to play, so you're going to be dazing non-thunder Alestrals. Not too bad. Kind of another madness effect to be able to daze, but it's limited to non-thunder enchanted cards. But where it works with your Electropossum is when this face down High Voltage is sent from your field to your underworld, you can return it to your field face down and give your Thunder Alestrals +2 attack until the next turn. So this is having effect from being face down, your opponent not even knowing that it's on the board. They may assume, if you're playing Electropossum, that there's a chance High Voltage is down, so they may not start trying to target and destroy your back row, if they destroy this with a P-Gust effect, Equal Links, or if you're doing it with your own effect. You're going to send it, you're going to immediately get it back, so you still keep the card on the field as long as your Electropossum, or as long as there's nothing to prevent it from coming back. But so you're going to get this right back into your rune row face down, and then you're also going to buff up your Thunder Alestrals at that time. So it's also kind of a battle trick if you are able to trigger the Electropossum in the battle stage. So like an Altar of Stars or an Asteria's Starfall, something to nexus onto the Electropossum. You're going to buff it up to an 8. You're going to target and destroy a card. depending on when you're doing this, you might just destroy that Celestial that's battling. Like, this is going to be a very tricky card to play around, in combination with that high voltage. And then you get the added benefit of it being a daze card. That's probably going to be the less use effect, but this is a really cool combo. Interested to see how people slot it in their decks. Moving on to Frost, we've got another champion of Keone in Chillalotl. Adorable little guy is a 2/5 and allows you to foretell 4, and then you may add a Frost rune foretold this way to your hand, and then if you do that, expend 1 spirit. So you don't have to expend just a Frost, just any spirit. So this card's really nice. Good defensive body in a 5. Still working a little bit with this foretell in Frost. We'll have to see. Frost foretell is not like fully outside of the really outside of the Catarant Champion of Keone stuff. Is where you're really doing foretell, but you're also sending to your underworld. So what kind of effect it's really going to have in the foretelling really is just kind of probably stacking your deck for the future. But it's really nice to be able to add a Frost rune to your hand. You pay 1, get to add, just take that card and add it to your hand. Sets up, if you're expending Frost, sets up Cryoling into Cryovern and potentially Cryoscorch. I think this is a good card. I don't know if it's super strong, but if you're grabbing Blizzard Whiteout with this, I'd say that's pretty strong. Grabbing a Mountains with this isn't horrible, especially if you're going to need to be playing some Stadium Wars. So just another way to search out a Mountains. This can definitely help you if that rune would not be a great draw when you see it foretold, and you don't want it to be in your draws coming forward. You can just kind of deck thin and get out of hand for one spirit. There's good stuff. We'll have to see if it's really going to be played. I don't think it's really going to be like a 3 of index, but it can search out a new Frost rune in Glacial Stasis. So Glacial Stasis is a 1 Frost counter rune, and this Glacial Stasis can only be played if you control a Frost Celestial. Target an Celestial, so your Celestial or opponent's Celestial. Until the next turn, it cannot ascend, and its effects cannot special cast Celestials. So this is nice. I think, like the team said in the reveal video, that the art here explains the card. You're freezing a Hydrake. Hydrake cannot crash into you. It cannot special cast out that Twindra. You also would not be able to ascend over the Hydrake or whatever you Glacial Stasis. This is a good card against, say, a Sorlet Champion of Aeolus. So it cannot... That's a card that would not be able to ascend. So it would still be able to like search out cards, Champions of Aeolus or Aeolus, but it would not be able to get that ascension into a Chrysor Champion of Aeolus because it cannot ascend, and that Chrysor has to go over a Sorlet that destroyed an Celestial in battle. So this takes away some of those battle effects here, which is really nice, because you don't have to you're not necessarily using this to stop an attack. It's just part of the Gorgon's Gaze thing. It's preventing the ascensions and preventing extra special casts. So I think this is a really good card. This is nice for Frost since it likes to go a little bit wide, but some of those Elestrals can be a little bit low. It helps this deck prevent getting run over and kind of reversed on having their board wiped while the other board builds up. Good against Nobby and Doppelgator as well. So this is a good card. Look for it to definitely be played in Frost decks. And then moving on, all of these we've had revealed. We did talk about Ouroboros in the last video. So double check the runes here. I think yes. So real quick before we move on to the last of the runes, we do know what is going in here at 78 and 79 because Primary Artemis revealed Ectopossum Champion of Artemis yesterday. So this Ectopossum, and so we know we will have the Hypnossum Champion of Artemis as well at 78. So this Ectopossum is a 6/3, 2 lunar. When your Hypnossum is destroyed in battle, you can special cast this Ectopossum from your hand using 2 lunar from your underworld. When you cast this Ectopossum, you can expend 2 lunar in order to target a suppressed card and return it to the hand. So this is a really interesting card. So we'll have to see with the Champion of Artemis Hypnossum if that's going to play any well with this card in order to get Ectopossum to your hand, because you have to have this card in hand to be able to do it. But it does play somewhat nice with the Moonrise Hypnossum. And so, reminder on this Hypnossum, when this Hypnossum is destroyed, you can special cast it from your underworld in attack position, misenchanted. So you're recurring this Hypnossum. You do have to misenchant him, of course, but he does get to come back. And so that will bring us then here. So if you allow your Hypnossum to get run over, which again your opponent may not purposely try to go over your Hypnossum, but there's ways to force that. So you can force your opponent to destroy your Hypnossum. You can then cast out this Ectopossum with spirits from your underworld. So that is really cool because it's not an effect that says using 2 lunar from your spirit deck or underworld. This specifically says it has to be underworld. So you do have to set this card up by having lunar in your underworld already to be able to activate this effect, but being able to recur those spirits already for the cast is really nice. And then you have the secondary effect of basically being able to pay its actual cost. So basically putting those 2 lunar back into the underworld in order to target a suppress card and return it to the hand. This can be really interesting because if you're playing this in a suppression focus deck, you can suppress your opponent's big guy, and then this is a way to bounce it back to the hand. But there's potential that you could try to target your own suppressed cards and bring them back into your own hand. Could be good in mirror matches to kind of reset your own cards. Is it going to be the main use of it? Probably not. You're probably looking to have something from your opponent's board currently suppressed and then be able to get this out, get that Celestial or card back to your opponent's hand and make them recast it out. But interesting. We'll just have to see how easy it is to get Ectopossum to into your hand to be able to use it. So could be good, could be bad. A 6 attack is not too bad, but the 3 defense isn't really all that good. But since you're being able to special cast him out after a destruction in battle, this also can just set up Ascension fodder for this Ectopossum to be able to get into something bigger or maybe a little bit more useful. So we'll have to see how it looks, but I'm interested in it. It could make a really good tech piece. Might just make something fun to play around with. Always have to remember that not everything has to be completely meta. Just have cool effects that you can try to work with and make a fun deck around. Now we have some more runes that were revealed. So we've got 2 more lunar runes. The first one being Dreamlock, a 1 lunar counter rune. So this Dreamlock can only be played when an opponent casts an Celestial, Nexus a lunar. If you do, negate its effects on the chain and suppress it until its controller's next turn. So this is a really fun card. It does have the limitation of requiring you to be in lunar and have a Nexus bank with lunar on it to set this up. So you're gonna have to have 2 other cards to be able to Nexus between, and Nexus lunar specifically. But this is really cool because this is going to prevent your opponent from getting their on cast effects, as well as if they're casting it, if they have a receive effect that is also going to trigger on that cast, you're going to be able to negate those effects on the chain. So they cast it out, effect is triggered, goes on the chain. You can then Dreamlock that Celestial, negate that effect, and suppress it, so it's not going to be able to trigger it again if it's a receive Celestial, and they are going to use some form of reenchantment or nexusing mechanic to get another trigger for it. You're going to be able to just completely stop that card, um, not from attacking again, but you're kind of Gorgonsing it in the fact that it's not going to be able to use its effect. It's not going to be able to re-trigger it because it's suppressed, and it's going to stay that way through your turn as well. You're going to be able to keep them from doing anything until get um, they get to their next turn, which can be really impactful to the game. So that's why I think Artemis is like a good card, especially because its effect allows that card to be suppressed until your next turn. So you're at least getting one turn where they have to deal with it being suppressed on their field. And in this case, I have to deal with it suppressed on their turn when they cast it, as well as suppressed on your turn. So just a little bit of reverse order, but it's going to be really cool to prevent your opponents from doing stuff with those cards, and really force their hand. The next lunar rune we have here, another one lunar rune, counter rune, is Catabasis. So this card can target up to 3 Elestrals and or runes, so basically 3 cards that are not spirits in a single underworld. So that can be your underworld or an opponent's underworld. It is written in a multiplayer friendly format. So that's why it's not just saying yours or your opponent's. That's why it's a single. And then put them on the bottom of the deck. So you do have to put those cards from whatever underworld you choose has to go to that person's deck, as those are connected. Cards from your opponents cannot go into your underworld or into your deck. So you're choosing either your own underworld, trying to get some cards back into your deck. This could work really well with Hermes, to recycle champion Avioliths, because you're going to want to use those to send to heal. This could be a really good card with that. And then, so you're putting them on the bottom of the deck. Hopefully you find a way to shuffle then to kind of get them really into rotation. But then if 3 cards were put back, so you don't have to put 3 back, but if there are 3 put back this way, draw a card. So this is really nice. You get a little bit extra draw for getting rid of the underworld. This can really hurt some underworld plays, so this could be kind of devastating into a Morfrost deck that wants some Morfrost in the underworld to be able to trigger Chimera Bat. If they don't have stuff to target, you're just getting a draw with Chimera, and just kind of discarding. You're not getting that board swarm with it. I think there's going to be some use with it. This could really hurt Dugabus, kind of limiting getting the Earth cards that Dougie's going to want to return with its effect after milling. You're always going to be able to return something with Dougie after triggering it, because you're sending more as long as you're sending the Earth cards. So if you're playing heavy Earth, then it's going to work. But this card can kind of play around with it, get some of those back out. I think it's going to be a card that sees niche play. It's going to take some testing to figure out what we really would want to use this in. But it does present some fun kind of gameplay. I think it might be something that gains value the further on in Elestrals. It's nice that it's already here, and it'll probably fit going forward. We'll see how it works in this meta. And lastly, we have an actual creator reveal in a new creator card from Mr. MBT, Patroclus' Dice. So if you've seen MBT's video, flavor on this plays with Patroclus. his dice game, as well as his connection with Achilles. I'm not the biggest Greek lore knower, but from what I've heard explained, this is actually a very flavorful card. So thank you to MBT for making a Greek mythology inspired card, as well as doing your best job to break the game in its entirety. So this is a 2-cost Omni counter rune. So don't think that Omnis are going away from this game just because the focus is on getting more element specific runes. We can still get these put in to the game as long as you create them. This has a lot of text on it. Is basically the max amount of text you can have on an Illustrious card in the 5 lines and decreased font size. But I think this card's really cool. So you can target an Celestial and give it +2 attack, +2 defense until the next turn. That's not too bad of a counter and battle trick effect, being able to get a little bit of a stat buff. It's not the biggest stat buff, but it's too less of a cost for, say, an Argo if you're only going to use something that's going to buff that same amount. It's not as good as Argoing a necklace, but you're also not going to wind up having the cost of the necklace to pay out at the end of your turn. So I think this is a little bit of a small battle trick that can be very niche useful. And then when this card is sent to the underworld, you can target another counter rune in your underworld. So as long as this is not the first counter rune you're using, you're going to trigger this effect after using this. So give it the battle trick effect, trigger its effect from going to the underworld, target another counter rune in your underworld. When you do that, shuffle that card, so the targeted counter rune, shuffle that card into your deck. So you're getting a deck shuffle any time you send this and target another counter rune in your underworld. You're getting a card back to your deck. You're shuffling your deck. Both of those can be really powerful. And then if you do, return this card to your hand. So Patroclus' dice is then also recurring itself right back to your hand. That's crazy. So you're doing this for 2 spirits and you're not losing a card, and you're gaining a card back from your underworld to your deck. And then this also plays into the Achilles side of this. If Shield of Achilles was the rune that you returned and shuffled into your deck, then you're drawing a card. You could potentially just draw that shield again. This card is going to slot into a lot of decks. I think people may overestimate how much they're going to want to use this or be able to use this. But again, it's an Omni rune, so you're going to be able to use this. I think it's actually really nice to play around like the Luma Veil, because Patroclus' dice is coming back to your hand each time, and you're also keeping a copy of that other counter rune out of your underworld. And so Luma Veil wouldn't be able to stop this as long as they're not also keeping that same counter rune in their underworld. So you're always going to be able to kind of keep them off of those Luma Veil triggers. As well, this little bit of battle buff is awesome. So definitely one of my new favorite cards, both for design, flavor, lore, as well as these effects are super cool and really let you have multiple ways to play this card. Maybe a little bit broken, but I do believe that was the intention with this card, was to try to make it as broken as possible and still be legal in this game and be printed. So that was all of our reveals for this week. So if we look over here into the spreadsheet, we'll kind of see where we're at. I think this next week we're going to be getting the rest of the Hephaestus, if not all of the rest of the Hephaestus stuff, shown to us. If we look here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 28 cards yet to be revealed that does not include stellars, reverse stellars, full arts, since full arts will have to be revealed as their original card as well, except maybe these last two, which could be full art reprints from something from other sets. So I think we're looking at probably 1 to 2 more of these podcast style reveal sessions, as they've been revealing 20-ish cards from the set. So I think they could probably split it up into 2 more reveal sessions. So I think we're going to get mostly the Hephaestus stuff, and then we might backtrack a little bit to Ares, into Ares where we don't have, where we still got like 4 cards and we know 3 of them in a sense, but there's still an extra one hanging around, and then we've got some extra lunar stuff hanging out here too. So we'll see what the rest of the reveals will look like, but just going over what I think we could see in these reveals. So we're going to be getting mostly Hephaestus with the Bellaby stuff. So we know we have Infornax coming, so he'll slot in here at 17. Since these are champions of Hephaestus, we know champions come first. So most likely this 15 is also going to be another champion of Hephaestus, because we're still a little low on champions of Hephaestus numbers wise. In my current breakdown where we're sitting at 9, but we probably want to get up to around this 12 to sit at the same as, close to the same as the rest of the divines in this set at this point. So I think we're probably looking at 15 being a champion of Hephaestus. My personal guess is this could be Lavalith, and this might just be a want for the Liths to get all of their champion forms. But I think this could be Lavalith, because he does come before Bellaby being a Frostfall card, and then Bellaby being a Moonrise card. So I believe he would slot in even as a 2-drop before the Bellaby. And since this has to be a singleton card, I think that's a really good Fire Celestial to assume that this card might be. Then we will have 2 more cards revealed here. I am thinking that because we have Rumacole and Scavacole, I think we're going to get Rumagem and Scavagem, champions of Hephaestus here. This would give us the extra, with Lavalith, this would give us the 3 more champions to get to the 12 count, as well as, since Vesuvatuga is our main kind of champion of Hephaestus, being the box champion, I think we will play a little bit into the Earth side, the Earth Fire route. So I think Rumagem and Scavagem could slot in here as some more champions of Hephaestus. We'll have to see, but this does look to be a two Earth Celestial line at least. So interested to see, but I just think since we already have Rumacole, Scavacole, Rumagem, Scavagem would make sense in this kind of line. We then also have a singleton Fire Celestial that needs to slot into 23. This one I'm really unsure. I kind of hope it's just another brand new Celestial, since this was a new 3-cost Celestial line, but we'll have to see. Don't really have a guess on that. 30 here I also don't really have a guess on, as it's going to be a singleton Celestial, hopefully a new water Celestial. I always like to just see new Celestials here at the end. Even if it's a Nexus form, just show me something brand new, and I'll be happy with it. We are completely filled up in our main Thunder package here, so don't really expect any more champions of Zeus or anything, unless they fall into, who knows, maybe a Wind. I think that's about the only other place we could get them. I talked about this last week, but Toxoswarm and Cyclovenom, I believe, are probably going to be here at 52, 53. They could slot anywhere in here in this presumably Wind section from 52 to 56. But like I said, with that kind of full art tease of a card, knowing that it's most likely Cyclovenom, Champion of Hermes, Tox Swarm, Cyclovenom fitting in here probably right after the Champions of Aeolus, as long as there's not some other champion in between Aeolus and Hermes. So then that will leave us a 3-cost line or another 2 and a 1. These are hard to tell what they are. Again, I know it's kind of cop out for it. I just really hope a new Electro line. So then, like I was saying earlier, when we were talking about the Hera stuff, Hera is currently only sitting at, again, like Hephaestus, at that 9 Elestrals. While it really works together, your Signetric is really your only big payoff, as everything else is a little bit more defensively statted, doesn't really have ways to out stuff. Your main way you're outing anything with the deck is using Imperial. And so this is why, partially why, I think we're getting the Snowaddle, Penguat, and Parawatt line. Because you've already seen with Rice Ridge, we've got some little frost in there. But we already had the tease a little bit, like I talked about prior week. But now we've basically got the main tease here. Let me see. Open image, yes. We have the main tease here, and we've got the Snowaddle right here on the Magnaros card. This part here is not part of the original Snowaddle. If we look at Snowaddle here, we notice there's nothing on its beak. It's just its golden eyebrows. But when we get over here, it doesn't have the same eyebrows. Now it's got kind of the crown, the Hera crown, or face mask, whatever you want to call it, along its face. This, to me, signals that there is Snowaddle, Champion of Hera, coming. So that's why I think we have this line. We know that Chillwaddle's the last Frost, so if we slot 3 slots prior to the Rhynymph, we're getting Snowaddle, Penguat, and Parawatt. Champions of Hera, pushing up to 12 Champions of Hera. That's perfect where we want to sit. And I think this is going to be your other side to Hera. Might play with the Rice Ridge side a little bit more, but this is going to be the reason why Rice Ridge can search Frost cards as well. This might play a little bit more with that Underworld, sending a Frost. You might want to add the Thunder card to hand and send the Frost to the Underworld. This line might be the reason you're doing it, and this is probably your other payoff for Hera. So I'm really interested. I see almost no way that this is not coming. These cards would not be saved for the next set because there's too much to do with Demeter and Apollo and the 2 new divines, and then also filling out some Zeus or anybody else that needs to get up to, say, a 12-ish champions specific cards. So I think we've got Snowaddle, Penguat, and Parawatt coming here. I'm not too sure what else really could fit here as Frost cards. So my money's on that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And then we've already talked about these. Neblio, Leo Bright need to be revealed. Ruminus needs to be revealed officially, but we know they're there. Singleton, Solar card, just make it Heliolith. We already know that something will go there. Heliolith makes a lot of sense. And then so we know, since Patroclus' dice was 85 and Aurora Boros is 84, our Elestrals will end at 84. And so we've got the Hypnosm at 78. So this leaves us with a Singleton 80, and then a possibly 2-stage Elestral line here at 82, 83. I could be my basic self again and say, make it Necrolith. Make it Necrolith. It does fit because it is Champion of Artemis, and this would be right after the Champion of Artemis. I do not think this is a Lumavale pre-Ascension. I think that has been a little overstated in the community of what might possibly be the first stage to Lumavale, so a pure lunar card. I know that Barabib was a created Celestial based off of Barabog, which was a created card for Dan TDM in the initial set. This doesn't work out the same way. I believe. I feel like that's kind of a one-off situation. Um, I think Lumavale is meant to be its own standalone two spirit lunar solar card. Nothing else but in this set at least. If they want to play off it in another set, go ahead. But I think these creator cards need to stand on their own as their own singleton cards when they're first introduced. Don't introduce something else on top of them that probably could have affected that creator's design, because that probably would be pushed more from the Alestrals team and saying, I like that, let me create another card to go along with your card. But then you have to balance two cards at once. I think they want to focus on just that card and that card alone. So while Lumavale is a 2-cost card, I think this is just going to be a singleton, already known Alestral that is potentially champion Necrolith, which I would welcome. A champion Necrolith. Make Necrolith playable. Such a cool design. Needs to be played. Make him playable. And then as for what could fit in here, it's going to be non-titled since it's between Lumavale and Ouroboros. So 2 new Lunar Alestrals would be really cool. We could also look at our Lunar Alestrals and see what is kind of a 2-line that could potentially just get new effects, kind of like Eddie and Kerbis and Dougie and Dugabus. So we could see maybe like a Gloombat Phasmacore, maybe a Toxerian Night Venom. Could be really cool to see. Could also see some other singleton cards get stuff. So, I mean, you've got all these here: Corvuscle, Bandaloon, Porcuraith, Kamalis, Cryptoris. Could be cool to see these cards also get a little bit of love and get some different effects on them, to play them in a different capacity. Bandaloon, probably not since we have Champion, but you've got, so then that does really leave 4 others. Would be cool to see those, but I think maybe a brand new Alestral's original 2-stage lunar Alestral line would be a really good thing to fit in here. And then into our runes, we know that we've got a Titled Eruption, so I'm going to slot that in at 78 right now. This really could be at 79 as well if we've got another like artifact to go with Hephaestus, could slot in here. There's nothing that says we need a water card here. This is just kind of placeholder. No clue what the water could be. I'm not good with guessing runes, as runes is really the design team's thing. I could not tell you Dreamlock, Glacial Stasis, how to say that needs added to the game. Ares, we know that Dreamlock and Catabasis, if I can spell right, are going here at 103 and 104. Apparently I don't know how to put cards in the right spots here. I'm not sure what made me put that at 85. But Patroclus's dice does not go there. 85 may or may not be our last Celestial. So there could be something in here, but not sure what it is. Could be back to that Earth rune, so we'll throw it back in Earth for now. Patroclus's dice is down here, is our last actual card in the set before we get to the full arts, though. So we know Dugabus is going to be our first full art. We know there should be multiple armament of Ares and Colosseum of Ares. Based on artwork, seems like Ares has his spear, he's got a sword, and he's got a shield. So we're just going to put sword and shield. Thank you, Pokemon Day coming up. So nice little Galar reference. So we got the sword and shield here at 99 and 100, which leaves us 1 spot for another Colosseum of Ares. I think 3 artifacts and 2 stadiums is a great starting spot for this Ares tech. And then that leaves us just with the rest of our full arts. I haven't really gone through. I'll have to look at what was the holo rares to see what we're going to be slotting in for the full arts. Not all of them have to be the holo rares, but we'll kind of see what this breakdown might be going forward. So let me know what you thought of this week's reveals, what some of these spots that we're still looking at, what Elestrals you think might get new champion forms, just new effects, and slot into some of these. Leave a like and subscribe, and I will catch you back next week to review the next set of reveals.